as a Redskins fan, there's a play or a game that's on the top of the list for me. Do you have a moment in your career, or even maybe not in your career, maybe it's in someone else's career that you think is the most memorable moment for you, your favorite moment, your favorite match?
Well, yeah, my favorite. I loved working with The Rock, and WrestleMania 17 was a hell of a ride. But that WrestleMania, and I love working with Vince because the Vince feud transcended wrestling for 2 years. That was water cooler talk. I don't care what you did. At lunch, you met and you asked, hey, man, you see what Stone Cold and Vince did last night? And Vince was an awesome opponent because he feels this stuff as much as I do. Man, that guy, he's an animal. He's one of the most interesting people I've ever met in my life, and I love the guy. But to answer your question, that match in WrestleMania 13, I knew we had those people from Jump Street. I dived on him, started whipping his ass, and then we go into a barricade. I start bleeding like a stuck pig, and finally, after a couple of attempts, he turns me over in that sharpshooter, and I'm laying there, and I'm in the push-up position, and I am trying to escape. And we loved working Chicago, Rosemount Horizon, because first of all, the fans are terrific. And the acoustics in that building, that's a wooden ceiling. So it's like when they yell, it's kind of like hitting the gas pedal. You get an immediate response. Damn. Everything you do in that ring is driven by a response. Mm-hmm. And so, man, those people are just quick. And so we had that crowd, hook, line, and sinker, and I was going to pass out in the pool of blood. Got the finish earlier from Vince. The pool of blood was not planned. Until later by two individuals, but there was a no-color policy in effect, and I was laying there bleeding like a stuck pig, and I'll never forget, to answer your question, that moment was finishing that match, executing the double turn, and laying there. Man, I bled like a stuck pig. I was in a puddle of blood. You never want to hit something that's gory, but it was an extended period of time. Laying there passed out while him and Shamrock were going to take care of business. And I just performed my ass off, worked my ass off. So did Brett, and he really brought it that match. Laying there in that pool of blood with my eyes closed, because that was all I had to do until both those guys got out of the ring, and then I'd get up. And it was my idea to stun the referee, because I said, I still got to if someone's going to try to help me, I'm not just going to start hugging on him and thank you for helping me up. I'm still a rattlesnake. Laying in that pool of blood, most satisfying moment in my entire wrestling career.
That's awesome.
Yeah, hey, I got a question. Who was the best? Who did you enjoy wrestling with and performing with the most in the lens of you trusted them? Because I've realized with the interviews that I've seen with other wrestlers that you have your life in their hands and vice versa. Okay, so not who was the best performer for the crowd, but who was the best to wrestle with, in that you could trust them and y'all could put on a show and protect each other.
There's a lot of guys like that, and you hit the nail right on the head. I recently was in a ring, and we was hitting the ropes pretty damn hard, and the people standing around were like, holy shit, I didn't know you guys are moving that fast, or the things happen in that ring so violently. I said, yeah, man, it ain't ballet. I loved working with Bret Hart. There was so much trust and respect, and like I said, the high-profile matches I've had with Rock, Undertaker, Triple H. I mean, the Mankind. The list could be a mile long, but if I got to give you one guy, Bret the Hitman Hart. Yeah, he was just awesome, and there was a trust and respect there from day one. And he saw me coming up, and he had taken a year off to get or not a year, but some time off to get a knee cleaned up. And he picked me as his opponent to come back, and I think it was in the Garden, for the Survivor Series match. And that helped me before, we would end up feuding, a year later. So Bret Hart.
Bret Hart.
You talked about laying in that pool of blood. And when I was a boy and would watch Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes and all those guys wrestle, and, man, they bled on a Monday regular show. And I always thought as a boy, like, how does that process, like, how do you get so comfortable with, man, I'm cutting tonight, and obviously that might be pre-planned. They know that that's going to happen. How do you get yourself mentally there to do that repeatedly time and time and time again? Because for me, that was probably the most, it's obviously visually shocking. You know, when you're watching a match and there's just blood everywhere, and those guys, especially back in those days, were just bleeding hard, covered.
And you remember that, right?
Yes.
And
as a wrestler, like somebody, when do you remember the first time you bled?
Oh man! But to answer your question, I mean, to go back to what you're saying, it's the exclamation point on a great feud, and it's like, hey man, it turned into a bloodbath. But I'll tell you, I went to wrestling school. I was in there for about 5 months, 1 day a week. There was 25 kids in class. We had one ring, so ring time is pretty limited.
Yeah.
Okay, so you learn a little bit of chain wrestling. You learn how to take a bump. You just learn how to fall and protect yourself. And part of the 101 and the 201 class ain't, well, here's how you get color. No one teaches you that.
That's what it's called, get color.
A little juice. So all of a sudden, man, we was in Dallas, and there was going to be a match. Eric Emery was booking. I think it was the first time I was in Tennessee. Anyway, I was in a locker room, and I think it was Jerry Lawler or somebody. I said, or it might have been Chris Adams. I said, hey, man, someone told me we was going to go out there in like a big battle royal type thing and bleed. And as a new guy in the business, I hadn't even been in a year, and all of a sudden somebody wants me to bleed. Well, okay, what's the process? So I asked one of the guys, I said, man, how do you make a blade? And the guy showed me his technique. And then, you know like those old school razors?
Yeah.
The old ones.
Right.
Double-sided? Yeah, double-sided. Clip that thing in the middle and then, get some corners and make a small thing, push it through a piece of tape, so you got a pull tab and, put it on your wrist. Some guys are carrying their mouth, some guys in their waistband, but me, if it was a big pay-per-view, man, I got plan A, I got plan B, and I got plan C. So I'm out there with three options. Yeah.
Dang.
And so, it's a very interesting feeling when you first push that blade into your head because there's like a crackle of that skin, and then you're going to drag just a little bit.
Oh man!
And at first, you kind of like, man, it's like a rite of passage, though.
Right.
You're expected to do it because you grew up seeing it, and all of a sudden now you get a chance to do it. And then all of a sudden, it's like in the '90s, so trading blood with a lot of people, and some of these guys, were party animals. Right. It's like, man, you think those guys got to be the dumbest people in the world. And like the guy, that always bite on the open cut and then spit the blood out.
Yes.
I was like, holy.
I would imagine you're right. There's some people that I would just be like, I don't want to color juice with you tonight.
There were those guys. Those guys that were like really out there.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, man, when you get out on that mat, some of those outdoor shows, that mat is so hot.
Yeah.
On those, like we did some rodeo.
I never even thought of that.
Bakersfield, California.
Yeah.
You've been there. So it's so hot that the mat's about 120 degrees. It's hard to lay there just for a 3 count. Man, guys are kicking out. And but when you get in some of those arenas, like the Sportatorium in Dallas, that building was so the wrestling atmosphere was so thick there, and the Carolinas. I mean, wrestling is hot here, especially Ric Flair territory, Four Horsemen, Crockett's. So that mat, just like this, you got metal construction, some 2x12s, a little bit of a mat about like that, and you got the tarp. But on top of that tarp, man, guys been walking around in the dressing room. I mean, you drink your coffee, maybe you got to take care of business, or you're at the urinal, you're taking care of business, and all of a sudden you walk into the ring. So it smells like stale beer, popcorn, piss, sweat, and then you got blood on top of it. It's like
God.
It's a
any
buffet.
night of the week you get staph infection. That's got to be one of the most unsanitary places to roll around with another guy. And get sweated on or bleeded on.
God dang.
Oh, man.
I just invented bleeded.
Yeah,
I like it.
bleeded.
Put it in the dictionary.
I'm so glad you answered that for me because I think that was probably the number one question on my list ever since I've been a little boy about wrestling as to how that process goes for somebody, and you answered it perfectly.
Lights